Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, salam, wherever you're watching us from. We welcome you today from England, France, Germany, America, and Romania. We would love to know where you're watching us from, so say hello in the chat and let us know where you're sitting. So welcome again to MACFEST 2026. To an event that is a truly international celebration of language and culture, with guests joining us from all over the world. It's a very busy panel today, so we usually let people ask questions and share thoughts in the chat, but today our host, Professor Matras, will explain to you how we will structure the event. I just wanted to mention that MACFEST welcomes donations through our website, as little as £1, just so we continue offering these quality events for free. You can watch our past events on the YouTube channel. Today's event is also being recorded. In the next few days, you'll be able to watch it again. And just a little announcement, if we have any artists in the audience, MACFEST Muslim Arts Award submission process this year has opened on 1st of April, and we call all UK-based Muslim artists to submit their artworks in one of the 4 categories: painting, drawing, calligraphy, and photography. The details are on MACFEST website, and the deadline for submission is the 15th of June. Our host for today is Professor Yaron Matras, and he's the author of a recent book called Speech and the City, which examines university public engagement with multilingualism and language diversity in Manchester. He is the co-founder of the Manchester City ofLanguages initiative. Before that, he was Professor of Linguistics at the University of Manchester. He has published widely in the field of linguistics, including the multilingualism and language policy, and on languages of the Middle East and the Romani language. Over to you, Professor Matras.
Dziękuję bardzo, Katarzyna.
Proszę bardzo.
And you should know that my name is pronounced Matras, my surname. It's actually a Polish name originally, although I'm very, very remotely connected to Poland. But the name is Polish and it is actually quite common in southern Poland.
Well, that makes it easy for me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again. We have these events every year, and as in previous years, this event is part of the various events that we put on in Manchester and around the world for what is called UNESCO International Mother Language Day. Manchester as a city, Manchester, England, adopted International Mother Language Day onto its civic calendar some years ago. It was an initiative that I proudly started and sponsored about 10 years ago. Initially through grassroots local neighborhood events that I set up as part of a project that I was running at the time at the University of Manchester called Multilingual Manchester. And then in collaboration with other organizations in the city and the city council, in 2018, it became part of the official civic calendar. International Mother Language Day is celebrated internationally. It's a UNESCO initiative. It's been around for a couple of decades now and commemorates originally language demonstrations in Bangladesh, what was back then East Pakistan, protests for the right to use Bangladeshi or Bangla, the mother tongue, protest during which a number of people lost their lives, sadly, but are being commemorated to this day. And a Bangladeshi international initiative brought it to the attention of the world community, and around the world, this is now celebrated. When we started celebrating International Mother Language Day in Manchester, I actually asked for it to be called International Mother and Father Language Day. For several reasons. I mean, I wanted fathers' contribution to passing on their language to be acknowledged. And I wanted us to come away from this kind of traditional idea that only mothers pass on their language. I was successful for 1 year But then the city council decided to revert back to the traditional and internationally recognized name. Nevertheless, I choose not to feel excluded as a father, and I appeal to all other fathers who are proud of their languages not to feel excluded, and together we can celebrate that and simply call it International Language Day. I'll come back in a moment to the history of our activities on multilingualism in Manchester and the situation in UK, just to give some context for a moment. And before that, just to say that this event is being co-hosted by MACFEST, the Muslim Arts and Culture Festival, and Manchester City of Languages. MACFEST is devoted to promoting and celebrating Muslim culture and cultures in all their different aspects. And I am very proud to have been one of the very, very first non-Muslim speakers to appear at a MACFEST event when the events were first launched almost 10 years ago. And I personally grew up in Jerusalem, one of the holiest cities to Islam, very closely surrounded by Muslim culture and very strongly immersed in it and in the languages of many Muslim communities. I'm a linguist and I've worked on languages such as Arabic and Kurdish and Persian and Turkish, and their influences on one another as well. And perhaps that's a topic we can come back to. I'm co-founder of the Manchester City of Languages initiative, which is a discussion circle and initiative that we set up about 6 years ago in Manchester with the aim of having a forum to talk about problems, issues, challenges, needs surrounding languages and propose what we call global solutions. So how can we shift and gain from our experience of both positive, good practice, but also problems that we encounter, and how can we try and fix them and find solutions that are applicable and can be implemented in institutional contexts and policies. And this is something that we're interested in locally, but also internationally. We network with other initiatives around the globe with a similar ethos in the recognition that language is part of everybody's daily life. It is part of who we are. It is part of our identity. And therefore, restrictions placed on our language or the inability for us to exhaust and express ourselves in our language will limit our capacity, whether it's intellectually, culturally, emotionally, in the family setting, and so on. And there's another topic that I'd like to come back to in the conversation, the topic of linguistic justice. How can we make sure that language does us justice and that institutions that surround us and run our daily lives are conscious of that and do justice also to our linguistic aspirations. Before we come back to that, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists and our guest today. If we can please have everybody on video who's on the panel, including our guests as well. Okay, thank you. So Leila Kamil is based in Bucharest. She is a linguist who has done research on Turkic minority languages in Romania, and she teaches Turkish and Tatar in Bucharest. Professor Akbar Ahmed is an author, an academic, a former diplomat, based now in Washington, D.C. in U.S., and he has written in the U.S., and he has written extensively about the history of Islam and Muslim cultures around the world, particularly in West Asia, including Afghanistan and Pakistan. And Munira Alusa is a teacher of English as additional language in a secondary school in Manchester, England, and also the co-founder, and head teacher of the Manchester Arabic School, a weekend school that teaches Arabic to people of Arabic background, but also to people of non-Arabic background, and we'll hear about that soon. These are our panelists, and we have a guest today on the panel as well. Hagar Bartana is a research student in physics at the University of Jerusalem, but is also co-coordinator and co-founder of an initiative called the Language Exchange, which brings together Palestinian and Israeli women in Jerusalem who come together to learn each other's languages, converse in each other's languages, and obviously break the strong segregation barriers that are imposed by the environment of a conflict. So we're waiting to hear from her as well. In Manchester, the motivation that I had with colleagues some years ago to look at multilingualism came from a recognition that multilingualism is a lived experience. And in Britain, that is not obvious in terms of the tradition of institutions, including academic institutions and teaching. In fact, I was just at a conference in London last week, and it became very clear to me that there is a kind of a rift between at least two separate directions when we talk about languages in the UK context. And I elaborate a little bit about the UK context here because most of us are based in the UK who are hosting the event. However, I think that this rift is not untypical of other settings as well. But England, of course, is thought of as the prototype or archetype monolingual society. In fact, some years ago, we heard the Prime Minister say, we will succeed in the world because our language is the language of the world, and everybody should have English as their first language. And it's not rare to find those kind of voices in the public debates in the UK and in England. In fact, in the United Kingdom, there are, of course, regional autochthonous languages, the Celtic languages spoken in Wales, in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, partly also in Cornwall and the Isle of Man. And there have been initiatives with various degrees of success to strengthen, promote, revitalize those languages. Most of them nowadays, thankfully, not controversial. And some, such as in Wales, certainly very, very successful. And of course, in the Republic of Ireland is also lost many of the speakers of Irish, but has maintained Irish and is promoting Irish as a national language with a very, very strong emblematic function, but also a communicative function on a day-to-day basis for young people. That's one strand of language policy in the United Kingdom, the British Isles. But the traditional and probably strongest policy strand in terms of languages is to view language as a skill that you learn when you go to school. Something like maths and physics and perhaps other subjects. You arrive in school typically monolingual. You learn a language at school because that's a skill that can help you find a job. And it's on that basis that the government in UK has been maintaining language study, promoting language study. And at the moment, in fact, language policy in the UK is led, and this might surprise people, it is led by an agency called GCHQ, which is part of the security services. It's the UK's spy agency. They basically set the targets for government policy. They're implemented by the Department for Education, together with several other government agencies, and academics, or many academics, are involved in creating teaching programs for languages on that basis. And why does it come from that direction? Because the idea is that learning languages can equip civil servants with valuable skills to make the UK more competitive on a global scale in terms of it's flagged in this way: security, diplomacy, and trade. In other words, languages are seen by the mainstream establishment in the UK as a tool that can help us protect ourselves from others. So we learn their languages so that we can spy on them, or we can defend ourselves, or we can preempt their moves and do better. And that's how it's kind of promoted centrally. But alongside that strand, there is another very, very different type of discourse about languages in the UK, and that is languages are lived experiences. They're there not to compete with others or to spy with others, but to build bridges between people and their own heritage when families come from elsewhere. Very different narrative to that of what is called indigenous languages or autochthonous languages like Welsh. The idea of indigenous is I was here before you, or my ancestors were here before you, and so I have a right to keep my language. Now, I, of course, don't dispute that right, and I think it's great what Wales has been able to do for its language. But surely the idea of precedence in the territory is not the only consideration for having a right to have your language. And we have about 50% of young people in large cities in Britain and other Western countries are multilingual. And they're multilingual because they embrace both a history of intergeneration migration, so a proud history of being there and then somewhere else, but also belonging to the here and now right here. And the two are not in contradiction for them. And it is that symbiosis of identity and of culture that is represented through maintaining multilingualism. And we have a very, very different discourse emerging in cities in Britain and elsewhere in Europe. Let's embrace multilingualism as a lived reality, not a skill to beat others and to dominate others, but as a lived reality that we have at home, which enables us to build bridges. Now, that narrative, that discourse is at a disadvantage. It doesn't have the support of the larger government institutions. It doesn't always have the support of the media. Not only does it not have the support, it is often also excluded and ostracized, and we have to sort of fight our ground to make that voice clear. So we're coming from a position of inequality, an inequality that might also lead to some injustice. And initiatives such as ours, City of Languages, are trying to address those issues. And since we founded City of Languages, we were the first in Manchester with such a title. I'm aware of at least 6 other cities in England that now have a City of Languages initiative. We're trying to network. Not everybody, has the same priorities or the same backgrounds, but it is something that is emerging as a phenomenon. So we're getting more and more resonance for this kind of point of view. So that's a little bit where I come from. Otherwise, my research is very much based on how can universities contribute to awareness of multilingualism, as I've just described it now. But I've also had an interest in individual languages, minority languages, and bilingualism. And I've studied a number of languages, primarily of the Middle East and of Central and Eastern Europe, such as Romani, for example, one of the disadvantaged languages. I'd like to start, first of all, with our panelists and ask, just at a personal level, can you tell us a little bit about your personal language history? What languages did you grow up with, or what languages did you develop an interest in, and how, and at what age and in what circumstances? And let's start with you, Leila, please.
I am Tatar. I'm half Nogai and half Crimean Tatar. My father is Nogai and my mother was Crimean. I grew up in Constanța, which is the main city of Dobruja. Dobruja is located in southeastern Romania, and which is a multicultural and multilingual land, Dobruja. And I can say it is a model of ethnic coexistence as a result of linguistic diversity. The Romanians are the majority, but there are also Aromanians, Bulgarians, Greeks, Jews, Ukrainians, Russians, Tatars, and Turkish-speaking Muslim Roma people. Roma people of Dobruja considers that they are Turkish, but in fact, they are not Turkish. They are Roma people which speak Turkish and are Muslim, because there are Catholic Muslims in Transylvania also. And but after the fall of communism, Romania was a communist country. Many Arabs, Greeks, and Pakistanis have come to study medicine at the University of Constanța, and they are making the city more cosmopolitan.
So how about you personally? What languages did you grow up with, and how did you use them?
First of all, instead of learning Tatar, I learned Romanian. Actually, Tatar should have been my mother tongue, but because all my friends were Romanian and my entourage was Romanian, I learned Tatar later. So I consider that my first language acquisition is Romanian. and I learned Tatar and Turkish later. Actually, most of the Tatars are trilingual. They speak Romanian, Turkish, and Tatar because Turkish and Tatar are very much alike, and they are a Tatar and a Turk could easily understand each other.
Okay, thank you. Professor Akbar, over to you. Tell us a little bit about your language biography. Which languages surrounded you when you were growing up and then gradually in your professional career, which is very long and extensive. So we're quite looking forward to hear a complex and story.
Yes. So first of all, I'd like to thank MACFEST, to you and the very impressive distinguished panel. And just the idea of hosting an event like this excited me because I've been associated with MACFEST. I'm a great admirer of Kaisa Shiraz, who's one of our very, very distinguished intellectuals, scholars, media personalities, because language is so important in terms of defining who we are. As we talked about, English as a language which is now lingua franca of the world. So it's all around us. And as a teacher, I see my students, young students, most of them born well after 9/11. And I look at the world and the language that they are picking up, the language they're being assaulted by, I would say. And I despair because the words they're listening to or hearing constantly are destroy, kill, hunt, behead. And I'm wondering, my God, these kids must be thinking the world is a very violent and a nasty place. And that's why this discussion becomes so important, because I was born in 1943 when the British still ruled India. And when Pakistan was made, we moved to Pakistan. And I grew up in a school called Burn Hall. Burn Hall is a very well-known school in Pakistan, up in Abbottabad, the town that gained great fame or notoriety, whatever you'd like to call, after Osama bin Laden was discovered there. But it's a beautiful hill station created by the British really for themselves, for their administrators up in the hills. Beautiful, lovely climate, lovely scenery. And I grew up there. The fathers, the Catholic fathers who taught us, were great role models who really instilled the values of compassion, piety, learning, respect for others in us as we grew up, and we had a great deal of respect for them. But what would happen is, because I came from a background where my parents inherited a cultural tradition of speaking Persian and Urdu, but I was in a school which emphasized English. And for the first time, I felt the tension or the pulls between a native culture, indigenous culture, which I belong to, and I assumed I belonged to it, and an imposed culture, colonial culture, which was at the same time necessary because it was the medium of instruction. And to make the point and underline it, the fathers insisted that anyone caught speaking Urdu, the national language of Pakistan, would be given a tight slap, a clip across the ears, so to make sure that no one spoke. And we were fined, I think, 4 annas or something, which comes to, I don't know, 2 pennies or something. This is the early 1950s. Now that meant that English became our language. And because of that, I was privileged, I will really say privileged when I look back now, to be able to read Shakespeare and the Romantic poets, and a passion which still stays with me. And that, I think, is a great blessing of that encounter. But it also created a kind of schism in me, a kind of paranoia, a kind of dilemma. Who was I? What was I? Because my own history and culture were a blank. So it was only when I came to England as an undergraduate and I met more senior scholars from Pakistan that I understood what I had missed with the vast language, the vast knowledge, the sums and the culture that I inherited as a Muslim, the Arabic, the Persian, the cultures of Islam, as it were. You just heard of the Tatars, the history of these wonderful people all across the vast span of history. And I began to make up for it. And a lot of my work since then has been this attempt to bridge these gaps and try to bring one learning to another learning, because in the meantime, Pakistan itself was going through a crisis. I was then in the civil service of Pakistan and an assistant commissioner in East Pakistan that became Bangladesh, So I lived through that period, and I saw how a language, you mentioned this, how that language, Bangla, was neglected by West Pakistan, who were the dominant wing or the ethnicity, and they neglected it, and they deprived the Bengalis of superior posts and so on in government. And the result was that resentment and the association of a mother tongue with the idea of political injustice. And that's a very powerful combination. It can ignite and create, as it did for Urdu. Before the creation of Pakistan in the 1940s, the people who spoke Urdu, mostly Muslims, they felt that Urdu was being neglected. And to them, Pakistan would mean the survival of Urdu or the development, or further development of Urdu. And I was seeing how language itself, and today, as you probably heard, there are problems in Balochistan, in the KP province, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of Pakistan, where they speak Pashto. And you have similar debates and resentments brewing there. And I think to myself how history changes, but it doesn't really change, because we are seeing the same patterns coming up again and again, except the administrators who remain consistent in their lack of understanding of the minorities. So this is where my own passion for this subject comes from, and that's why I'm delighted to be with you and your colleagues.
Thank you very much. That's a fascinating story. And as you pointed out, there were in your youth a feeling of having missed out on certain things. And obviously in decades of scholarship, you have extensively made up for whatever you might have missed in your youth, and have enriched our understanding of so many of these issues over the years. And that's beautiful. We're all very grateful. And
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
And today and honored. Munira, you moved at a rather young age from Palestine to England, and your languages are obviously Arabic and English. Tell us a little bit about your family and your children. Where do they stand with regard to Arabic and the Arabic language? And we'll come back in a moment. We'll continue with your work in Manchester as a teacher, but maybe from the personal and the family side. How do you negotiate languages in your family?
Of course. Thank you very much, Yaron. Thank you, Kisra. Thanks, everyone, for this lovely chance to go through, I would say, our successes my personal successes over the last 30 years. Originally, I'm from Palestine, and I lived there and I grew up there. And when I was in that Arab environment, English was the language that I wanted to learn. So I studied language, English and linguistics at university, and I was really proud that I can speak a bit of English. Moving and joining my husband here as a wife, and then starting my family, there was a switch off. So now being in a country where English is the first language, I started to grow more interest in the Arabic language. I don't know, because of the family, because of heritage, culture, you just want that sense of belonging. So for me, living in a country and in which I do speak a bit of English in it, so it was I did not compromise on English, but I became more interested in reviving the language, the culture, the identity as an identity for my children who were born in this country. And I want to emphasize that sense of belonging. You are British, your English is your first language, but you have your Arabic language as well, and we need to look after that language. So since they were young, it was me, and my husband used to speak more English with them, but I thought with the children, it was always Arabic language, so we have to speak Arabic. Even when they start speaking English, I have to speak Arabic to them. And, as I said, after those now 30 years or plus, they speak Arabic fluently, and they speak English, and some of them speak even 3 and 4 languages. So it does not conflict. It does not conflict at all, because seeing now new parents come in with their new children say, oh, I'm really worried about his English, I want him to learn English. It doesn't conflict at all. And I think with this webinar, it's going to be there archived somewhere, but it's going to be a real evidence. It's doable. You can look after your language, you can speak it, you can teach it, and it shouldn't conflict with your English language or your life in this country. Of course, then I became more interested in helping other students who were in this country and who wanted to learn Arabic, and this is where I started teaching and running the Arabic school. I've been doing this job for 25, 26 years, and it's absolutely the best thing I've ever done for myself, for a generation. Looking back now, seeing children whom I taught since they were very young, now graduating, and I was even invited to some of their weddings nowadays. And my message still pass on: for your children, teach them Arabic. You're the next generation. It's doable. We've done it before you, and I'm 100% sure you can do that as well. So that is on the personal side. Arabic is always in my house. It's in my heart, as we say in Arabic. Language is the home of soul. اللغة هي بيت الروح. And language should be always used, and be proud of it no matter what. There's nothing to be scared of.
Thank you. That's beautiful. We also say لسانك حسانك إن سنت لسانك من خلف خانك. Yeah, your
Yes.
language is your horse. And
Absolutely.
if you take care of it, it'll take care of you. But if you betray it, it'll betray you as well. And we'll come back later to hear more about your work in the Arabic school. But in the meantime, back to Leila. Leila, you said that your language is Tatar, or you're of Tatar background, but it was only in later life that you learned the Tatar language. And that's interesting. That also reveals something about the situation of the language. Can you tell us a little bit about the Turkic languages in the Dobruja region? What is their status, and are they being retained, or are there many people like you who were not taught the language in their youth and are now rediscovering their linguistic heritage?
This is the case of the younger generations, which don't speak Tatar anymore. They speak Romanian and or English. Almost all of the young Tatars of the Bruja speak English, and this is why I can say that. The Tatar spoken in Dobruja can be considered a language in danger of extinction, because the number of its speakers is constantly decreasing. As I said before, there are two varieties of Tatar spoken in Dobruja, the Crimean Tatar and the Nogai Tatar. The difference is, but both the Crimean Tatars and Nogais came a few centuries ago from Crimea. They fled the Russian-Turk wars, and they settled in Dobruja. Others settled in Turkey. And the level, as I said, the level of danger is quite high, because the younger generations are no longer interested in learning it for social and economical reasons, especially. Young members, young Tatars, prefer to speak Romanian because they speak it at school or with their friends, and they abandon the mother tongue in favor of the official language of the country, which is Romanian, of course. And I can say that the destiny of the Dobrujan Tatar depends on the attitude of its speakers toward the language. And the evaluation of the Tatar competence increases along with the age of the speakers. Older generations achieved a better proficiency of level on mother tongue. And older generations contain more Tatar speakers than the younger ones.
And what support is there for younger people who want to learn or improve
It's difficult to say because the subjects in school are taught only in Romanians. They have the Tatars have the chance to learn Tatar as a mother tongue, but there are a few interested in learning it. They learn it especially in the family sphere, not at school.
And why do you think there isn't much interest in learning Tatar among younger people?
Because of pragmatic reasons. Actually, they don't need to learn to speak Tatar. Because Romanian is spoken in schools, in institutions, everywhere, and Tatar is spoken only at home. This is why there is no pragmatic reason to learn it. And they usually learn Turkish because there are many Turkish firms who came to Romania, and they hire the persons who speak Turkish.
So what are the opportunities to learn Turkish? If you're growing up in a background similar to yours in Dobruja, your background is Tatar, you may have had some exposure in the family to Tatar. What opportunities are there to learn Turkish, and what is the motivation to learn Turkish?
Turkish is learned. There is also the Turkish minority of Dobruja, which came in the Ottoman period, along with the Seljuks, and there are on the one side there are the Turks of Dobruja. On the other side there are the Turks of Turkey who came to Romania. And Turkish is learned as a mother tongue in schools, and there are also among the minority languages in Dobruja, it can be considered dominant Turkish.
I see. And is there a lot of exposure to media from Turkey or books or publications from Turkey?
Yes, there are books. There are most of the Tatar people watch Turkish movies, especially soap operas. They are very popular, and they can learn Turkish from just watching films.
So that's very interesting. So there's been a kind of a replacement in a historical perspective of one Turkic language by another Turkic language. You described how people are not motivated to learn their heritage language because it's not practical and for pragmatic reasons. But on the other hand, there is interest in another Turkic language which is not physically present in that region, but is coming in through media. So we've got sort of a history of language shift unfolding in front of our very eyes in some respect. Let's stay with...
Elder Tatars show a strong emotional attachment to their mother tongue, and they consider it signals their identity, their ethnic identity.
Sure. Yeah.
And according to them, the language and the ethnic identity are inseparable.
Right. Okay. How interesting. Let's go on continue a historical excursion, and let's come back to you, Professor Akbar, and if we can draw on your expertise and knowledge in the history of the Islamic sphere. Islam is, of course, a multilingual faith, and yet we have certain hierarchies. Arabic, of course, is the liturgical language, and the Arabic conquests back in the day, in some cases, Arabic was imposed and replaced other local languages. In the case of Aramaic and Coptic, for example, that were replaced by Arabic. But that was not universally the case. We have many societies that maintain their language and in fact nationalized, standardized local languages, and yet use Arabic as liturgical language. How can we understand this interrelationship historically between languages in the Islamic realm or sphere, if we can call it that?
In the case of Islam, because the Quran, the holy book of the Muslims, was revealed in Arabic, and all the sayings and doings of the Holy Prophet of Islam which are called the hadith, are in Arabic, originally at least. Arabic has a very special status in any Muslim society. So Muslims have a great deal of reverence if they see the Quran in their room, especially in the more elderly people, not all, but more elderly people. They will always place it on a higher elevation in the room as a sign of a gesture of respect. And the problem, as has been pointed out by our colleague, is that when you're growing up in a culture which is very, very different to your the culture which emphasizes Arabic or traditional modes of learning, you have to really adapt to that. And one of the considerations is to seek a job, to learn the language that is popular. For example, Muslims in India can't rely entirely on their knowledge of Arabic for jobs. And if they need jobs, then they must speak Hindi and so on, and be proficient to succeed and really to look after their families. So that tension I felt throughout my life. And I was aware as I was growing up, because I had the privilege of being posted in senior positions in the field as the district officer and so on, in all the provinces of Pakistan. So I was very quickly able to understand the richness of local culture, and also the fact that my colleagues and I, we had that idea that the central government, the central language, the national language is somehow superior, and the way of communication through that language is superior. But in fact, the local languages, Balochi, for example, or Sindhi in the Sindh, or Pashto in the KP province, they're very rich. They're very rich, and they are replete with wisdom. Their traditions may be oral, not written, and that is often overlooked. So my colleagues who would visit me and we talk about local culture, etc., they would show a kind of almost a contempt for local culture, and they'd ignore it. So I spent a lot of time when I was in the frontier province in Peshawar, translating the Mataluna. Mataluna are proverbs, Pashto proverbs, and they're beautiful. They're so wise that I would urge people just to read them, just to for the enjoyment and the wisdom that they contain. They're earthy. They are almost Shakespearean in that sense, very much down to earth and face to face, or rather coming out of a face to face society. Secondly, I found that in the West, especially recently, especially after 9/11, people had very little idea of the sophistication and the background of Muslim cultures. So very often they create trolls about Islam is violent, Islam is this, Islam treats women badly, and so on. But one of the accusations about Islam was that Islam is not a very sophisticated religion. It's a sort of barbaric religion. It doesn't have thought. It doesn't have critical thought. And it was straight after 9/11. I was involved in the media to a great extent, trying to explain Islam. I was at the American University in DC as the Ibn Khaldun chair. So I was automatically invited to many forums. And I was in this very distinguished, very famous bookshop in Washington called Politics and Prose, very famous. So it was straight after 9/11, and I went with my dean, Dean Goodman. And we entered there and we saw that there was a huge crowd spilling onto the main highway outside. And it was very tense. It was straight after 9/11. So the very fact that a Muslim speaker was speaking drew a lot of interest, but also some hostility, some coldness, some indifference. So I didn't begin my talk by saying how peaceful Islam is or how good Islam was, because I knew that won't work. So I began by quoting one of the great poets of the Urdu language called Ghalib, Mirza Ghalib. He's like Shakespeare or Hafiz or one of these giant figures. He's not an ordinary poet. So I quoted this verse of his, which I will share with you and your viewers. Na tha kuch to khuda tha, kuch na hota to khuda hota. Dubaya mujhko hone ne, main na hota to kya hota. See, it's a very philosophic and a beautifully expressed verse in which he says, if I didn't exist, God would have still existed. And God will still exist when there's nothing and I'm not there. I have been ruined. Dubai is being sunk. I have been ruined or sunk by being created. If I wasn't created, if I didn't live, what difference would it have made? So again, it's raising a lot of almost existentialist, nihilistic ideas in this couplet. I quoted that simply to show the audience there and not talk about the theology of Islam, that this is Islam. It's coming straight out of Ghalib, who lived in the post-1857 period of India, South Asia, when there was a vast rebellion against the British. And Lord Macaulay in 1835 had already passed his famous Minute on Education, in which he had declared, and this was shocking because this is the time of Ghalib, in which he had said that one bookshelf of a Western university is equal to the entire corpus of Sanskrit and Arabic literature. So he dismissed these indigenous cultures and said just one bookshelf is better than these local languages. And I was showing the audience there that not only is Islam very sophisticated figures like Ghalib, but we must understand each other's cultures through these great cultural figures and interpreters of culture. Because as I said early on, what are we seeing and knowing of each other? People there, I knew 90% would be understanding Islam through the images they got through television, through the media, shortened versions of violence, misogyny, barbarism. So I thought that as a Muslim scholar, it was my duty to reach out and try to create a bridge through this method, which was culture and language.
Thank you for sharing that episode with us. Of course, aside from the correction of prejudice and underfrated generalizations, what you've also shown us is that a pluralism of ideas exists within a pluralism of language. So to my question, which put simplistically was, well, why didn't Arabic just take over? We actually have a pluralism of languages which carries a pluralism of
1835, Professor. 1835, Lord Macaulay actually banned Arabic and Persian were actually removed because the language of India, the language of the Mughals was Persian. And of course, heavily interlaced with Arabic. And that was officially finished in 1857, along with the Mughal Empire, along with the Mughal Emperor, although by that time they were both very, very much in a state of, I would say, weakened condition. So it was there, but it was consciously removed. And it's taken a long time for Pakistan, for example, or Bangladesh to attempt to revive that tradition of Persian and Arabic. I don't think entirely successfully, but people are very conscious of what they have lost.
Okay. Yeah, and I think many people are not aware that what is referred to as the golden age of Hebrew poetry, medieval Hebrew, actually existed under Islam in the Iberian
Andalusia, yes.
in Andalusia and elsewhere, and is still considered a very important phase in the development of Hebrew. People think Hebrew was completely abandoned and then revitalized by the state of Israel. And that is not quite correct, because Hebrew continued to live on as a language of poetry in Muslim Iberia, and later on as a language of scholarship and a language of science and the Enlightenment, and then gradually became vernacularized, spoken again. Let's move back to Munira now. Thank you, Professor. England being such a monolingual, notoriously monolingual country, and you run what is called in the local jargon a supplementary school. So it's a school that operates at the weekend, extracurricular, and parents send their children there to learn Arabic. What are the challenges, some of the challenges of running an enterprise like that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Yaron. As you know, Arabic is not yet a recognized language by the Education Ministry. So we have to learn Arabic in a supplementary school. They are like organization. They're not funded by the government or by any other bodies. They just like locally by people who are interested to look after the Arabic language. We were really lucky to have the Arabic GCSE on the Edexcel exam board. So it was, for us, it was a very good way to convince children to do the Arabic GCSE. Of course, to sit for that exam, you have to be good at English and Arabic at the same time. So you can't just do the exam because you speak Arabic. Your English needs to be good as well. So being a GCSE Arabic teacher myself and an examiner, I think that was the best chance for me to teach Arabic language the way I wanted it to be taught. Of course, we have the Edexcel curriculum that we have to follow, but at the same time, we have started to introduce like proverbs, idioms that are very popular in Arabic, but for a student who was born in England, you wouldn't expect them to know, for example, الطيور على أشكالها تقع, for example, as a proverb. So I started to introduce proverbs, maybe poems sometimes, for them to insert into their writing paper, which is, of course, can get them a very good grade. Imagine, as I said, a student who was born in this country and to use that language or to insert a proverb or a poem or like a verse into the writing, that will give them, of course, edge over others. So the GCSE Arabic was a brilliant way for the Arabic to survive. We're hoping one day the Arabic language will be taught into school as parts of the curriculum. Of course, it does happen in some private school, but not a lot of schools. Being as well the intervention and EAL English teacher, that helped me as well to give me to keep me motivated, because seeing children speaking different languages from all over the world and the way they look after their language and the way they speak, with their parents, it's really you become more determined to look after your Arabic again as your identity, as the sign for your presence in this country. So last week we had something cultural day. It's very common nowadays into schools where the students and staff will wear anything related to the culture. Could be a costume, could be bringing any items that represent, and it was absolutely beautiful, really nice. And there was a map where the students put the flags, and some of them started to remember the colors of the flags or the location of the country on the map. So only on this day they remember the culture, what they wear, the capital city, the colors of the flag, etc. But for language, it's a daily thing that for your home language, it's a daily thing that should happen every day, because you're using that language. You're using it with your family, you use it with a relative abroad. So language, it has an impact on your culture and on your heritage, because again, it's a daily thing. So it needs to be all the time recognized. And I hope again, one day, not just Arabic, of course, any home language that the people around it are interested into, to be recognized and to be taught into syllabus and into schools, because there's an increase. There is an increase of lots of students with bilingual and maybe triple lingual languages, but it needs to be recognized. And here I think we are a bit not being treated fairly with the Arabic yet, with all those numbers of students. It hasn't been yet presented as a language to be taught in schools.
And those pupils who study with you, do they mainly acquire that qualification that you mentioned, the GCSE, or can you also see that their daily use of Arabic in their daily lives in conversation is increasing?
It's not easy, because some of them are in years 10 and 11 and they have priorities, but it is a well-recognized GCSE by Edexcel, so they will have an extra GCSE, which is brilliant, to show on their status, which is something really good to show that you have spent your Saturdays learning Arabic. Of course, this will give them edge over other students. But again, when you encourage them and you speak to them, this is why the importance of the English language, because the English is the first language, that they will understand more the importance of Arabic when you speak to them in English. This is interesting. So I have to explain to them in English the importance of the Arabic language, and then of course teach them how to read, write, like in a good style. They become more interested, and you give them so many examples from all over the world. It does not affect you at all if you speak two languages. It's just you have to be proud of your language and never feel embarrassed, because some students, especially the new arrivals, back to my English work during the week, some arrivals, they feel a bit embarrassed to speak their language, and they feel a bit, I don't want to speak my language, I don't speak that language, but we know they do, and even they use it at home. But this is why we have to encourage them and to build up confidence, make them believe, there's no conflict whatsoever between you speaking your home language, which is something you should be proud of, and living in this country and learning English. And this is my job. I teach English, but at the same time, I maintain my Arabic, and I'm very proud of it, to be taught to the students who were born in this country.
Indeed, and the motto of our meeting today is respect my language, and that's a motto that Kesra Shiraz came up with a year ago when we met in Manchester with people from around the country and discussed what direction we're going on in terms of language policy. You remember, Munira, you were there, and others joined us as well. So on that note of respect, let me bring in our guest, Hagar from Jerusalem. You work in an initiative of women, Palestinian and Israeli women, who meet once a week for what's called a language exchange, right? Explain to us what is a language exchange, what exactly do you do, and how do you organize it, and what motivates people to come and join you?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having me here, and thanks for the panel speakers. It was very interesting. So let me start by telling you a little bit about Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is supposedly one city, but it's actually two cities. About 40% of Jerusalem residents are Palestinians, and about 60% are Israelis, but we are very divided. We don't really interact much. And it also reflects in the languages. So about 70% of Palestinian women in Jerusalem do not speak Hebrew at all. And only about 10% of Israeli Jews speak Arabic at some level. Okay, so we live in the same city, supposedly, but we don't have a common language. An absurd situation that occurs all the time is that people that are neighbors need to use English, which is completely different language, in order to talk, to communicate. But why? And so about 9 years ago, two friends that met at university, one Palestinian and one Israeli, just decided to change that, and started inviting friends to meet and just talk and teach each other Hebrew and Arabic. And now we have about 3,000 women that interact with us in one way or another, in one project or another.
Sorry,
I am a part of a team.
Could you just say the number again? Because I think the number is very impressive and we need everybody to
3,000.
3,000
women, yes. We have two main projects, and I am a part of the meetings that we have every week. We just meet and talk and teach each other our languages just to meet each other. We don't necessarily talk politics. If people want to talk politics, they can. We also have a group that talks about politics, but it's not our goal. Our goal is just to communicate, to be able to talk to each other, know each other, respect each other. And now we are about 15 women in the team that organizes our events, our projects. Sometimes we meet each other, and then people from outside just ask us, "Are you Palestinians or Israelis? What language is your first language?" And we just talk in mixed Hebrew and Arabic. And for me personally, this is the most comfortable way to be. Personally, this is
And what do you actually
yes.
do? Can you just describe to us when there's a meeting, how does it actually operate?
So we meet up in a very nice space that belongs to an NGO that operates in Jerusalem, which has agriculture on rooftops. And we come slowly, we gather around, and then divide to smaller groups. First of all, we just talk to each other. If there are new women coming, we just introduce ourselves. Some women already know each other and friends, and they sit together, or it varies relative to who comes. And then we have dedicated time for each language, so we can both practice and also hear how the language is actually spoken in that time. And then we go to the next language, and then afterwards, at the end, we have a circle and we talk about what words did we learn and so on. Our preferred way is that women will just talk and whatever they want to talk about. But if they get stuck, we have some cards with questions in different topics, and that's how we help them start a conversation. And the people from the team are me included. We go through the groups and make sure that the conversation flows and everyone understands all the time. And if there is a need for translation or some support, so we are there to help. And it's only women, so it's a safe space in many ways.
And it's a safe space, but what motivates the women to come there? And are there any constraints, any impositions, impediments in participating?
Yeah, especially when we're in a war continuously. The front is varying. Right now it's Iran, but for a few years now it's been very hard. Right now we meet on Zoom because people are afraid to leave their house. But people want to learn the other language. Some of it is very practical. Especially for Palestinians to get jobs, maybe, to be able to work, to be able to shop, to be able to go to the hospital, to see a doctor and converse even basically. It is very difficult. It's a very big barrier for a lot of people. And so this is a big motivation to learn Hebrew. And learning Arabic, I mean, people recognize that we are in the Middle East, although sometimes our regime wants us to think that we're in the US or Europe, but we're in Jerusalem, we are in the Middle East. We need to talk to our neighbors, first of all. And it's a very big motivation.
I see there's a question already from the panel from Professor Akbar. So let's hear that question and then we'll move on to perhaps another. Please.
I was fascinated by the presentation, and obviously it has greater resonance than just the discussion of a city, because this is Jerusalem, and we all know what's going on in the world, and we pray and hope, especially people like us who are involved in interfaith dialogue and promoting the building of bridges. My question was, would the people, and this may not be a fair question because you may not have conducted any survey like this, would you have any idea whether the Arabs and the Israelis have any idea that in Andalusia, the greatest Jewish poets, and they were very prominent Jewish poets in Andalusia, very prominent, were writing in Arabic, and that the greatest Rabbi Moses Maimonides, legendary figure, I've written on him, studied him, I'm a great fan of Maimonides, as a bridge between the cultures. Remember, he ended up as the medical advisor to the great Sultan Salahuddin himself. would they have any idea that Maimonides wrote in Arabic, that he wore Arab robes and so on? I'm simply saying because maybe these vignettes, these events, these features from our shared history may help understand each other better and promote a closer relationship than the one that exists right now.
Thank you. Let's also hear Munira's question, and then Agari can respond to both
Very
together.
interesting. Well done, Hajat. Great intervention. Really, really good. My question is the sessions that you use to teach Arabic and Hebrew, is it open for people outside Jerusalem or just for the people inside Jerusalem?
Yes. So first of all, I don't know what women that come know already. I mean, some of them I do know, but let me give you an example of the history. There's one woman that comes regularly, almost every week. She is about 80 years old. Her family is from Haleb, and the reason she wants to learn Arabic is and to preserve her Arabic is to just preserve her language that she was talking at home in childhood. And she often tells us about when she was growing up, other kids came to her family and were like, "Are you Arab? What's going on here? Why is your family talking Arabic?" And so, yes,
So is it open online? If anyone interested to learn online, can they join in?
Yes, so in that respect, we have people outside of Jerusalem in Israel, so people from Tel Aviv and people from Haifa. Women come to us sometimes. Outside of Israel, Palestine, it's a bit more difficult, but we do have a WhatsApp group for women who can't arrive physically to the meetings, and they can just on their own time suggest to meet on Zoom. And yes, there are also meetings in various times, and you're very welcome to join us.
Thank you. I was thinking, to be honest.
Yes.
It's not easy, but I'm thinking about it. And teaching Arabic is my job anyway. So yeah, that would be nice. Thank you very much, Haja.
Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. I'd like to do one final round to everybody, panelists and guests, and just ask you to very briefly describe what is your understanding of the concept of linguistic justice. What do you associate with linguistic justice? Do we see linguistic injustice? And if we do, how can we alleviate it? How can we work towards greater linguistic justice? And let's start with Leila again.
I think linguistic justice is linked to linguistic diversity, and linguistic justice is the right of all humans to speak their maternal tongue, to communicate in their own language without facing discrimination.
Thank you. Professor Akbar.
It goes back to the fact that language is seen as such an emotional and such a personal feature of your own identity that we tend to be very sensitive about language, and we are talking about these different cultures in collision and the misunderstanding they created. And Professor Matras, I'd like to remind you that I'm still waiting for an answer from Hagar for the question I asked about Maimonides. If she remembers or is able to give me an answer, I'd appreciate it. So, can you hear me?
She said that she doesn't know what information and background knowledge most of the women bring who come with them. So she didn't actually go around and ask them about Maimonides specifically.
So they won't know whether she won't have an idea whether he's understood as a great writer in Arabic. His great work, A Guide to the Perplexed, was...
Presumably some will have known, depending on what level of studies and reading they have. Some will have heard about him, and others will not have heard, I assume, right?
Well, in terms of justice and injustice and perceptions of injustice, Professor Matras, I think the example we raised earlier about the Bengali situation, because Bengali is a very rich and it's a beautiful language, and I had the privilege of having learned it and learned to write the alphabet. It's a beautiful language, but it got caught up in the politics of Pakistan. So Pakistan was made on the politics of its own identity, a Muslim identity, an imagined Muslim identity. And one of the features of that identity was the language of Urdu, which I've pointed out is also a very beautiful language. And paradoxically, it's a synthesis between Hindi, Indian cultures and Persian cultures. So this wasn't the language of the elite. The language of the elite was Persian in the Mughal court in the 17th, 18th centuries. But when the Pakistan movement picked up, Urdu became an argument that we will preserve Urdu and keep it. And with that enthusiasm and momentum, Pakistanis, I think, were over-enthusiastic, and they insisted that Bengalis also speak and only speak Urdu. And of course, the Bengalis, who are extremely passionate about their language, and understandably, it's a very rich language, produced great writers like Rabindranath Tagore, for example, Nazrul Islam from Bengal. These are great Bengali writers in writing in Bengali. They reacted, and then there was shooting, killing, and students were shot. And that began the movement for independence. Literally, in the early 1950s, the movement began, and it simply grew and grew as West Pakistan, which was the dominant politics of Pakistan, could not manage to or could not understand the significance of having created this cultural insensitivity about treating the local language in that way, and they were not able to then close the gap. And in 1971, you saw the breakup of Pakistan. So it's a great lesson, I think, for all political leaders to show much more sensitivity to what they think are minority languages, and dust the volumes in their libraries and really begin to understand history, because history teaches us many lessons which we need to understand and learn, particularly in our time and our age when everyone is shooting and trying to devastate each other.
So language justice is both a token but also a pathway to social
pathway
justice.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Munira, your view on language justice.
Thank you. Absolutely. I mean, with the language justice, something I've mentioned earlier is about recognizing the home languages in schools by introducing like sessions, maybe once a week, once a month, whatever. Just introduce the most common languages so children are more aware of the heritage of the students, their friends in the school, or the backgrounds, or maybe just learn a couple of words of different languages. It's really fun sometimes. It's a really like very popular activities when children started to learn other languages, like even daily vocabularies, or writing their names in a different. They get really excited seeing their names written in Arabic or a different language. Also, communities. I think communities need to be encouraged more to be more proactive and arrange for sessions. Maybe to be more involved in looking after their languages, their home languages, because nowadays with the online teaching, lots of people started to go for learning their languages online, and I think this is something. It's not really helpful for the supplementary schools. And the supplementary school is not just about teaching your first language or your Arabic or your Polish, etc. It's about bringing the community together, seeing other people, who speak the same language, who share the same culture, being together, having friends. Some people who don't speak English, of course, they're going to be stuck. They don't leave their home because they're scared to go outside. They don't speak English and they don't know anyone who can speak Arabic. So again, this is something very helpful. So the Arabic school or the supplementary school in general, it's like a hub to learn the Arabic language and also to bring people together, for different social activities. So it is important, and that of course needs some support. It can be done on individual level, but again, it needs a bit of support from somewhere. Thank you.
So if I may interpret a little bit, but I've known your work also for many years, there is injustice in the lack of support. Right? And that's something that we need to alleviate. Absolutely. Hagar, do you want to add a word about your view of linguistic justice?
Well, there isn't much justice here, especially the recent years. And yeah, languages is the first tool that you could use to try and bridge some gaps and just to get to know each other, first of all, before you even try to maybe solve a situation here. It's just the basic thing that people just need to know. I cannot actually grasp how it is very frustrating for me as a person who lives in Jerusalem that we cannot communicate with our neighbors. And yes, on a very basic level.
Yeah, and it is when you're in such a situation, it becomes a very, very emotional aspect as well, emotionally charged and emotionally moving
Yeah.
at the same time. And I'm sure that everybody who's listened to you and the activity, as I have over the years when I've heard from you about this activity, I am genuinely very, very moved as somebody who
Thank you.
also, as I mentioned before, grew up in Jerusalem and made the effort as a very, very young man. I believe I was one of the very first people in my generation who actually crossed the lines of segregation and learned Arabic. And I feel very comfortable in an Arabic speaking environment to this day. And I, of course, identify very, very strongly. Thank you for your contributions. We'll halt the panel contributions for the moment and see if we have any questions or comments from the participant audiences. Now, just to inform you, I cannot see on my screen, I cannot see the participants, but I believe our technical support team can see them. So if you would like to raise your hand rather than use the chat, and hopefully our technical team can then identify you and bring you in somehow into our window. I hope that can work, and unmute you so you can ask a question or make your comment. Is that okay with our support team?
We do
Yes.
have one question from, so it says, have you not thought of doing similar groups for men to learn both the Arabic and Hebrew? Why limit it just to women?
We'll come back to that in a second. I see that in the chat. Is it possible, Katarzyna, also for people to raise their hand and you can see them and bring them in so they
It
can
should be
ask
possible.
questions?
At the moment, no one's raising their hand. I
Nobody's
also
raising. That's fine.
can't see.
So Hagar, would you like to address that? So I don't know. Maybe it's a
Well,
question.
sure. Yeah, I feel like I'm sort of taking over the all of the
No,
questions or
please.
transmit.
But I'm assuming, you know, yeah, but you go ahead.
I
Do you
have an
know of
answer,
any?
yes.
Go
There
ahead.
are also groups that are mixed. If men would like to form their own group, then it's not my job to do that. I would happily give some pointers or anything, but and can have a cooperation. But I don't think it's on us.
Okay, so if there's men based in Jerusalem or surroundings that are interested in doing that, ahlan wa sahlan bikum, and let's see you do that. Munira, you wanted to make another comment.
Something to cheer Headteacher up. You know, Headteacher, that plant, climbing plant behind you, it's called Mahmoud or Maddadi. I have one similar here in Manchester. That's for you. It's Arabic. Mahmoud or Maddadi بيسموها. Something to cheer you up. Thank you. All the best anyway.
Thank you. And so if we have no questions, I guess, from the participants, then I suppose we can wrap up and thank again our panelists and our guest and our organizers and our support team for yet another lovely event. And just to remind you, this will be on video on the YouTube channel of MACFEST. We'll also put a link on the City of Languages website and the relevant social media, and you can follow up. You have our names, and some of us are easily accessible, findable on the internet. And if you'd like to get in contact with any of our panelists, then please just write to MACFEST via the website or the social media channels, and they will put you in touch with us. And we would also love to hear your feedback. So thank you again to everybody. Another successful year of languages since the last International Mother Language Day. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your expertise, and our collective call for everybody to respect our languages. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Matras. Got it right this time. Really sorry for misspelling. I just wanted to say thank you to all our panelists. And I would like to take this opportunity to say hello to my tutors from the Germanistic department in Łódź in Poland, from the linguistics specifically, where I did my master's degree. So it was a wonderful event because it's bringing to life all the knowledge and experience that a lot of young people have from school, where we learn the technical skills and then we go out and we put it into practice. So thank you so much for that perspective. I just wanted to mention that we've got a couple of events coming up on MACFEST. Professor Akbar Ahmed will appear again on MACFEST 2026 on Sunday, July 12th, also 2 o'clock on Zoom, for a 12th century novel. So I did put a link in the chat. You can also find it on MACFEST Eventbrite. So please take a look. It will be a wonderful, wonderful event. And then we've got tomorrow event about photography. And on Sunday, the 19th, it will be also part of an event that is part of Festival of Words and Books on MACFEST, children's books with Nadine Kadan. And on April 25th, we have Islamophobia and Muslims in the media. And for those of you who have missed the beginning, we are calling all UK-based Muslim artists to submit their works in one of the 4 categories, or more than one if you choose to, photography, drawing, painting, and calligraphy. The submissions for Muslim Arts Awards are now open, and they will close on the 15th of June. So you can now see the poster online. So thank you again for watching, and we hope to see you again on Zoom or on one of our live events. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I've just remembered this year, for the first time, MACFEST is opening only 20 tickets to the public for the Arts Awards celebration event, where the winners of the Arts Awards will be will receive their awards and will be revealed. And that event is on the 29th of November in Manchester. So please take a look on Eventbrite. There's only 20 tickets available. If you are able to join to attend the award ceremony, I highly recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Katarzyna, from me again for a fabulous introduction. Thank you, Yaron, for a brilliant hosting as always. And thank you so much to our amazing panel. It has been a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic event. As always, the caliber of contribution, the variety, the depth, the knowledge we've gained. I'm just so thrilled. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And especially for giving up your, how shall I say, Easter weekend here to our audience particularly. So thank you for everyone. And inshallah, we will have the same panel next year. And I've already got ideas who to invite for next year. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you, Professor Akbar Ahmed, for your amazing contribution, history, poetry, languages, perspective. Thank you, my lovely Layla, for contributing. You have enriched us, and we learned so much about the scene in your country. And thank you to Munira about the schools and her contribution, the wonderful work she's doing in the Arabic. And thank you so much to Hagar from joining us from Jerusalem. And that has really added extra to our event. It really has. And again, amazing hosting, Dr. Yaron. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon.